Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Thank you everyone for joining in this call today. I hope we are all set to listen to our facilitator tonight. Are we? Are we?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we are.
We are.
Yes, kindly I will request us to have our mics muted and our videos off for proper concentration, and get your books and a pen ready and your mind ready to learn. Okay? Hello?
Yes, we are very ready.
Yes.
Yes, we are ready to learn.
Yes, thank you. Therefore, allow me to welcome our facilitator tonight so that she will take up. So Doreen Washira, you are very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, and good evening, everyone. I hope I can be heard. Kindly confirm I'm audible enough.
Yes, you are audible
Yes,
enough.
we can hear you.
Thank you. And also let me have my my video, so that you can confirm this is a human being in this era of artificial intelligence. And with that, now I can be settled to have the discussion of this topic tonight. We love keeping time. Once we say it is 8, it is 8. And because our time is short today, I would want to go straight to the discussion. Thank you for tuning in and coming in and bringing others and sharing this word around. Mental health becomes very, very important to all of us. And this is a topic that we need to, talk about without fear, so that we can be able to support and become a support one to another. So our mental health today, we were to look at the areas, as you can see on your screen: emergency mental health support, emotional regulation, and building and maintaining healthy relationships. And the catch was on the registration and asking the question. And so to those who are kind enough to register and put their question across, I'll narrow the discussion this evening to some of those topics that came about. And that is, we'll look briefly at mental health and bring about what we are planning to have, and also look at the issues around stress, self-care, and emotional regulation. If time allows us, we'll see how far we'll be able to go with that. So talking about mental health, and I want to say that mental health becomes very, very key in the day and time that we are in. And we know many, many things are happening. And the things that are either affecting our mental health, either in a negative or even some that are affecting in a positive way. And we are going to be looking at that, because there is no health without mental health. Yeah. And so the areas of concern, I don't know who is talking, kindly mute. So the areas of concern, as I've said, we are going to look at stress, emotional regulation, support system, and self-care. Why stress? Because stress is one of the lead cause of mental health conditions and illnesses. Kindly someone, I don't know who could be that, mute. When you join in, kindly mute your mic so that we don't stop the rest. Thank you. So, and we just want to look at the definition of mental health. And we know that mental health is a state of well-being that enables people to cope with the stresses of life. And that is why it is important for us to look at stresses of life, because they will always be there. We cannot run away from such. And also realize their abilities, learn well and work well, and contribute to their community. All these things becomes very key. Get to know what are the stresses, what are these stresses that I could be going through, how can I be able to cope with them, What are my abilities, And the issue around, learning. We keep learning. Every day is an opportunity for learning. Even this night, it's an opportunity to learn something. And also to be able to work, not just work, but work well and contribute to our communities in every space that we are in, that we can become a productive people that are affecting in a positive way. And basically, this is the essential for overall well-being. As I started by saying, there is no health without mental health. And of course, it is as a result of this that we are able to be productive and also enjoy that quality of life. Nevertheless, mental health remains one of the most neglected areas of public health, and we see a lot of stigma. There are issues around socioeconomic challenges. Sometimes there is a limited access to these services. And that is why, as a result, we are seeing so many things happening, like suicide attempts that are so prevalent, even in our day, not only to the group of people we thought of, adults before. Now it is especially even in the youths, and sadly enough, even to the adolescents and the young people. And so we need to discuss these issues, because we see most of these, some of these cases are also underreported. And we see, of course, young youth and women, most of the time more vulnerable, but we're going to see how does that happen. And nevertheless, we cannot forget also men, because we have seen many issues around substance abuse, especially alcohol, narcotics, and this is a contributor to the mental health issues among men. So this is an area that we cannot avoid, and we cannot keep quiet, silent on this. We need to speak up so that we can also do away with stigma and see how people can be supported. Just some statistics to those who may, care to know some of these things, so that we can see the magnitude of these issues. And so we see 15% of working Kenyans, can you imagine? Approximately 3.7 million individuals, they live with at least one mental health condition. So that means there could be people living with many, mental health conditions, and 15%, that tells us a lot. If 15% of working Kenyans are affected by some of these things, then that also interpret in terms of what is happening within our nation. And then this is basically narrowed to Kenya. And then the common mental health issues that are around in the country, we have depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and substance use disorders. And when we look at the Kenyans who are visiting the healthcare facility, we see 1 out of 4 has a mental health condition. What does this tell us? Some of the people, having other issues, presenting as physical, medical conditions. At times there is a misdiagnosis in terms of this factor could have been left out. And so Kenya, also suicide rate is estimated at 6.1 per 1,000 people. That is according to WHO. And of course, there are some great news that came out when finally suicide was decriminalized. That tells us now people can seek more of support, not to get to that place of death by suicide. And youth and women are more vulnerable to mental health challenges. Still looking into that doesn't mean that we don't have men who are also having mental health challenges. But we see, of course, women, youths, the diagnosis won't be made quite early because of also their health-seeking behavior. And so unfortunate that the psychiatrist to population, that is a ratio in Kenya, is about 1 taking care of 500,000, which is far below the WHO recommendation of 1:10,000. And that becomes quite a challenge in our day. I want to say that, of course, of individuals with mental health conditions in Kenya at times do not receive treatment. This is as a result of due to stigma, lack of awareness, and insufficient resources. And mental health literacy among, of course, the general population still remains low. And that is why we, as Rubber Care Center, would want to sound and take out this conversation so that we can exacerbate the stigma and discrimination that is around mental health. Because we've seen that if one is able to, to be taken care of and they are on their treatment, on care, then they can become a productive people in the society. And indeed, we have many of those and they are doing super well. So that tells us that this is a condition that need not to be stigmatized, but rather to see how we can be able to support people. On that breath, because I must say the issues around mental health, if we were to delve on that today, it's a topic that would take us, many hours to talk about when we talk of issues around illnesses and all that. And we might not be able to finish on that. And because of some of the questions that came, I wanted to narrow to some of those issues that can contribute to mental health issues. And I want us to invite us on this online consultation. For those who could be having the mental health concerns, we have this engagement come next week with one of the psychiatrists, chief medical specialists at Kenyatta National Hospital. I don't know, most of you maybe have ever heard of Dr. Violet Okech, and she is gracious enough to come and be on a call and to listen to us and respond to many questions that we may have around the topic of mental health. And this one is just a very, very subsidized consultation. Some of these psychiatrists, for one to be able to see, I must say, but not shout loudly, you cannot see them without something to do with 5,000. But she's gracious enough to come and talk about that. And this one will be given privilege to those people who are going to register and ask their question, because we would want the doctor on the call to be able to respond to that. So this is not just open for everyone, because we get the questions in a way that the time that they will be given, she will be able to respond to that and give a way forward. And even if it is to reach out later for medication or any other processes, then that will be a follow-up that we'll take up from there. So take advantage. And I think Anne will help us by posting that on the chat as we move on. So that you can be able to register if you've been having a question around anything to do with mental illness, mental conditions with your people, and maybe something else, then we'll be having that good time to have Daktari sacrifice and come and be with us. So moving swiftly to the issues around stress. And stress is the body natural response to any threat or demand. And I start by saying stress is normal and inevitable. And stress isn't necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we hear of stress and the next thing we are thinking of is this must be a very bad thing. But as we started by saying, mental health, the ability to cope with stresses of life, that tells us that we will still keep on encountering stress at any form of level, whether growing up, whether, interacting, whether at workspaces, and we are going to see some of those things. And I want to say that when we look at stress, it is can be physical, can be mental, can be emotional in nature. And this is simply that when we sense danger or we get overwhelmed with something or something that happens to us, and at that point we don't have the necessary resources to know how to deal with such scenario. Even if stress is part of our everyday life, I want to say that in some way it is advantageous, such as making us to function well. And at this point, I would ask, who has experienced some stress in this week? There was so much that was going on media, a million chapo, many things happening. I don't know how that, affected you. I don't know how that sounded to you. What was the meaning you attached to that? And Million Chapati, Kenya is quite interesting that they will come up with, a way of making things that sometimes look, not not adding up to make them look so comical. I mean, everything, yani everywhere. And I think we have a way of maybe a coping mechanism. I don't know. But I can tell you that every day we are faced with something that can trigger stress. And that is why it is important for us to look at this, because if it is not well managed, then it can lead to issues of mental health disorders. I want to cite of a study that was done by APA, and that was a study, Stress in America survey. And they discovered that the recent stress levels in the US population are 4.9 on a scale of 10. 4.9. And why was I so much interested with the US anyway, not anywhere else? I must say, most of the time we are looking to the other side. People want to move to other side and not to stick around, And it is true, many people have left. But most common stress sources of this, apparently, is issues around money, work, economy, family responsibilities, and health concerns. The same common stress sources that we can cite. That is what we are encountering in a day-to-day. So what happens is that that study shows that can be, if we look at US and knowing it as a superpower, and these are some of the things that are happening right there, 4.9 on a 10 out of 10 of that point scale, and 10, of course, being the highest. That tells you then there is much that, that we need to really look at and see how to go about it. Kindly, James Minor, kindly mute. Please, when you join in the call, if you're listening to something else, there are people who want to learn. So let's respect this space kindly. Thank you. So if your mic is unmute, kindly mute so that we don't disturb the rest who want to listen to some of these things. Thank you. So, and basically what happens and why is it important to really talk about the stress issues is that we know when the body is, we are stressed, the body activates the fight or flight response, and therefore releasing stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And this is simply meant to prepare you to fight or flee from the stressor. Infinix, kindly mute your video. Put off your video, Infinix, kindly. And so we know very well that during our evolutionary history, this reaction was essential. But in the modern world, we see that stressors are basically psychological or emotional rather than physical. And most of the time, it induces chronic activation of stress response and burnout. And that is why it is very, very important for us to get to know how to deal with stress when we are faced with such. And let me give us very interesting facts about stress that might surprise you. I hope to surprise you. And the first fact I want to talk about is stress is good. Yes, stress is usually, in fact, actually useful. Without stress, we won't be here to talk about stress. And if we look at our hunter-gatherers ancestors, did not experience some stress when that lion was roaming around. I'm imagining what could have happened, their sleeping quarters. And, when they were, faced with those red berries, they looked good, but also emitted a strange odor. This was all to ensure that they are not encountered by such danger around them. So our ancestors experienced stress and they used it to their advantage so that they could procreate, and allowing us to have this discussion today. So even in the modern society that we are in, stress is useful. For example, if college students who are in this call didn't experience any stress over tests, then they would probably wouldn't study or show up for class, honestly. And for example, the workers who are in this call, if we didn't experience stress about project deadlines, then we might end up getting fired. So stress keeps us accountable for our actions, and at the same time, it's able to motivate us to be better citizens. And the other thing is stress is bad. Unfortunately, there are equally as many reasons why stress is bad, whereas might stress us such as what we get, like maybe you find yourself, you're taking care of a loved one who has chronic illness, that one can become a serious stressor. And of course, issues that are chronic are, can be extremely taxing when it comes to the brain and to the body. And that one can lead to issues around depression or other mental health consequences, as well as physical health issues. So we look at it also as stress is bad. And we are going to see at what extent can we be able to tell this stress is good and this stress is bad. Another fact is stress is contagious. It's contagious. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Stress is contagious. Why? Because it is tied to our social world, social stress. I'm imagining at the moment with their million chapatis, that could be a source of social stress, and that one can take a toll. You're trying to see how to take care of your issues, and something else comes up that is everywhere. That one can generate. Or the other thing can be feelings of loneliness, isolation, and this takes toll as well on the brain and body. And all these forms of stress can lead to depression, anxiety, and other times heart disease issue. But let me say this, stress does not have to affect us directly to change our brains. As much as it is contagious, we know that many sources of stress is in our daily lives, may not necessarily be to us directly, but of those of our loved ones. Of course, as I mentioned, health problems affecting a loved one, family responsibility at times could be the relationship issues. But I must say that these stressors, indeed, they have mental and physical health consequences. What is another fact? We can learn about stress from animals. Can you imagine? Animals can teach us quite a bit about stress. And why scientists use them to study how the social environment also influences our health and how we can be able to cope with stress. And therefore, we have learned also from many, like how to exercise as some of the strategies. And I keep telling people that one of the way to also to be able to reduce your stress levels is when you're interacting with animals. I don't know how many I have ever done that. And no wonder people like keeping cats, keeping dogs, loving to do some farming with animals here and there. And the other thing is stress is about perception. So this brings us to the original question. What exactly is stress? And of course, stress can be is a perceived disconnect between a situation and our responses, and also the resources that we have to deal with situations. In other words, stress is either real or imagined threat that taxes our resources, what we have within us. If we are out of that resource, if our emotions are bankrupt, then we end up to that point. And the word here is perceived, because stress does not always arise from the actual threat. But if we perceive it to be a threat, then it is a threat. For example, consider you're taking a ride on a roller coaster. And, to one, it will be fun and fantastic thrill, but to another person, it's a scary and stress-inducing event. Can you imagine those two? So if we perceive something as stressful, our brains immediately, how they react is they release hormones into the blood. And these hormones are the ones that change how we behave, our mental experience, our physical functioning. So, and if, for example, a lion presents in the room, what happens? That threat is real. And so we fear that this is going to eat us up. So what happens is that the hormones that we have they are going to help save our lives. That is, they of course ensure that they deliver the necessary oxygen to our legs so that we can run. And of course, if you find yourself, like, for example, potential traffic jam each morning, and now what happens is that you start feeling like you're getting late, you start becoming anxious, and the same hormones, they'll flow to our bloodstream so that they can take care of that, so that these hormones are able to give that critical, energy that we need. But what happens over time, if we are not able to know how to deal with this, then it becomes something else to our bodies. Let me say this. So then, if we say that stress is a perception, it also means that we must do something about it. We can train ourselves. Remember that if we don't do something about it, that's when it becomes, it acts against ourselves. And so, looking at the types of stress quickly, we have acute stress, and I must say this is just a temporal stress, and it occurs in response to a specific event or situation. Like, let's say you find yourself, you have a work deadline, you have a fight with a friend, hope we don't fight. You are also like in a traffic jam. This can be one of an example to illustrate acute stress. And how does this feel? That someone gets to a point of heightened alertness. Sometimes there is rapid heartbeats. You become so tense. You feel there is that sense of urgency. And what happens over time is that it makes one, feel like they are not at their best. And I must say the acute stress is seldom harmful. That is, it gets in small quantities, and as much as sometimes it is healthy, it makes one feel strong after maybe accomplishing a task. The repeated acute stress, if not managed, can lead to undesirable health effects in the long run. But with that, we don't, because anytime we do and we finish the task, then we feel that we are strong, healthy, and full of energy. Kindly, Gideon, mute. So chronic stress, when we look at chronic stress, is a long-term stress that goes on a very long period of time. And this can be as a repeated, life circumstances, work pressures, relationship issues, financial issues. And this one can also be as a result from not healing from trauma, or long-term health issues. Sometimes this is the stress that makes one feel helpless. Anxiety can come in, and depression, because the body is in a constant state of fight or flight. And sometimes you find some people experiencing this, they present with fatigue. Every time they are talking of muscle tension, they have sleep disturbances. And what happens? Chronic stress is the most toxic form of stress. And this one, if it is not taken care of, can result in numerous physical and mental illnesses, and also cardiovascular diseases like, look at hypertension, gastrointestinal issues, and mental illnesses like anxiety and depression. Episodic acute stress. And when we talk of episodic, is a style of experiencing recurrent episodes of acute. Remember what we've talked about, acute stress. And we said if you keep on experiencing stressful events or crises that takes so long, then you find yourself that the life becomes a bit unstable, and you find these people who tend to feel like they are tiptoeing on eggshells, being overwhelmed, stressed out all the time. They feel so stressed frequently enough until it becomes like normal. And they may even feel like they can't catch a break. It is harmful. This is a chronic stress, and this can lead to a place whereby if you're not paying attention to what the body and the mind is communicating, then it can lead to a breakdown. Physical stress, of course, when we talk of physical strain, can be either doing a strenuous exercise, you don't have enough rest, there is poor nutrition, there are illnesses, and this can also arise from injury or a long time. Kindly air mute your mic, kindly. Mute your mic. Okay. Sorry about that. Let me see what to do. This part of learning, you're experiencing some stress in the calls. Okay. Yes. So, and sorry about that. And so you are looking at emotional stress. And when one is emotionally uneasy due to issues around, would be relationship, personal issues, can also be as a result of loss with death, can be breakup, death of a loved one, household conflicts, could be office issues. And this can be characterized by issues like one is not able to concentrate. And if it is not controlled, it can cause anxiety, depression, or even burnout. Distress versus eustress. And we know distress is aversive stress that overwhelms and leaves one feeling unable to manage. And this one can create lots of anxiety, fear, helplessness. And this one is usually found with chronic or acute stress. But when you look at the eustress, as I said, is that you find this is good stress, and it allows us to be able to conquer a challenge. Wow, it is stimulating, it motivates, that kind of feeling that you get before you're giving a critical presentation. You are called to do something, that kind of anxiety that goes through, but after you are able to reach that goal, you're able to do that what you are to do. That is a eustress that was able to enable you to perform, and that is what we look at. When you have something you are looking towards and you're working to ensure you achieve that, that is a positive form of stress. What about workplace stress? And that is why also mental health at workplace has become very key, because this is where we spend most of our time. And of course, this can be caused by the situations in the work environment. There sometimes could be tight deadlines, high expectations, conflict with the co-workers, job insecurity. And most of the time it can feel, lots of anxiety, burnout, feeling pressured all the time. And if this is not dealt with, whereby one is able to establish boundaries, requesting for support, and also participating in stress-reducing activities outside of the workspace, then this one can also take toll on someone. And also when we look at traumatic, this occurs over a traumatic event. And some issues that we think they are really not as much like, accident, earthquake, violent crime. And these can be either things that we've experienced or things that, we've witnessed, or things that we've experienced. These ones can, if they are not taken care of, then they can be able to can generate some of undesirable results. And so if it is especially traumatic stress, if it is not resolved, then get to mental health conditions like PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders. So traumatic stress can be very serious and have long-term effect on mental health. And that is why this one may require professional help so that that person can be able to get out of that. Quickly, how do we manage? What are some of the interventions to take care of stress? One, mindfulness and meditation. This may help one to be centered and to reduce the body's psychological stress effects. How can this happen? Mindfulness is getting to be, sorry about that. When you can be able to get to be mindful with what is happening within you. You cannot be able to ignore. And at the same time, getting to a place whereby you can exercise. Exercise reduces the levels of stress hormones in the body. And as you exercise, then you're able to release also endorphins that are very useful to the body. That becomes very, very important. These are just few things, but not limited to this. Can be able to do many others. Adequate sleep. Sometimes we don't really think sleep is important, but I want to say that restful sleep, not just sleep, but restful sleep is essential. This one is able to help your body to recover from stress and emotional balance that is able to ensure that the body is restored back to its state. Remember, when you're under stress, many things are happening, many hormones release in the bloodstream, to try to take care of the situation. And when you rest, that is the time the body is rejuvenating itself and restoring the balance that is needed. Time management, proper planning, especially if it is in the work, your personal responsibilities. If there is good and proper time management, then this can help to manage some of the stresses that are around work or personal responsibility, so that you don't have to rush, the last minute, and you are like you didn't know this was what was to be done. That time management becomes key. Then social support, bonding with others, talking about your stress is very necessary, can be able to give you emotional support. And I will say this: stress is life, but having of what getting to the knowledge of what types and how they affect you will prepare you to deal with it better. If you ever find yourself buried in stress, then don't remain there. Remember, as I said, stress is part of us. Stress is here with us, and the ability to cope with stresses and stressors of life, that is what makes the difference. Let's look at what's happened to my screen. Let's look quickly at the emotional regulation, because why is that important? Because this is the ability to recognize and comprehend and manage your emotions in a healthy and adaptive way. When we are subjected to stress, many emotions present. One can become so angry, one can become so anxious, one can become so edgy, one can become so irritable, you are so agitated. All these manner of emotions come up when we are subjected to stress. And then emotional regulation becomes very, very key. And this is a question of being a master of your emotional responses rather than being mastered by them. It is not a question of suppressing or denying emotions, but successfully coping with them. And that is why when we get to know how to regulate, it will help us to cope with uncomfortable emotions like anger, sadness, anxiety. And by so doing, then they're not going to overwhelm us or hamper our actions and decisions. And I want to say, when we are able to control emotions, then we get to an enhanced mental well-being. We are able to have stronger relationships and overall better well-being. So this can be an asset if it is developed and improved through practice. I must say it is a skill. If one is able to hack this skill, then it will become one of the tools that is going to enhance the mental well-being. So this is very important because it improves, of course, our mental health. It improves our relationships, how we relate. We are not being outbursts one to another, and also self-awareness, and also encourages resilience. And so how, let's look at that. How do we emotion regulate? And the first thing is admit your feelings. This is the initial step. Sit, accept and sit down for a moment and scan yourself and determine what you're feeling. What happens in most cases, people try, to deny or suppress. That is the automatic response. We tend to deny or suppress these emotions. But I must say that accepting, realizing, and accepting is the beginning. And you can ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this way? And after you're able to do that, then get to the next step where you're able to label your emotions. Label your emotions, telling your emotion, I am angry, I am overwhelmed, or am I frustrated? What is happening? This will create a clarity and a sense of mastery regarding what is happening. And this is also a step towards not misinterpreting the wrong feeling, because some feelings can become mixed up, like someone can, might get mixed up being frustrated with feeling angry. We don't want to mix these emotions. We want to label and say, this is what I am feeling. The next thing is practice deep breathing. Practice deep breathing. And why do we say of this deep breathing? It soothes your nervous system when you're feeling emotionally overwhelmed. And this is an exercise I would want to have us take home and practice, and you'll be so amazed how this works. It may look like, something simple, but this is able to take care of your nervous system. So the first thing, how you do about it, is you ensure that you find a place where you can lie flat, can be either a couch, can be either on your carpet, and can also be a place where you can be able to sit at 90 degrees. And while you do this, it is going to alleviate your stress and prevent you from acting on impulse. Because anytime we are stressed, the next thing is we want to act immediately. So when you're feeling emotionally overwhelmed, do this breathing exercise, and we call it 4-7-8 technique. To those who came in with a pen and a book, 4-7-8 technique. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold breath for 7 seconds, slowly breathe out for 8 seconds, and then repeat it several times until you are more grounded. This is something you can even do when you are waiting to get in for an interview and you're feeling so anxious, you're feeling so, you are very afraid, you are sweating everywhere. And this is something you can engage in to calm your emotion, to alleviate any manner of stress. So 4-7-8 technique. Breathe in for 4 seconds, hold breath for 7 seconds, breathe slowly out for 8 seconds, and repeat this. Another thing is pause and reflect. When you feel triggered with an emotion, pause for 1 second instead of acting on your impulse. If you get out of the situation, move away from the situation to regain your composure and to be able to control your feelings so that you may respond. I say sometimes just leave the scene. You don't have to respond at that time, because when you pause mindfully, it is going to avoid emotional blow-ups. And this can help you to be less emotional in determining how to reply in a fair manner. You don't have to respond at that particular moment. If you feel you're not at your best, it is a state, it is a way to show that you are exhibiting your good mental health, but just leaving that space. You don't have to respond at that time. Challenge negative thoughts. Our emotions are linked to negative or distorted thinking patterns most of the time. And so practice recognizing when you are engaging in negative self-talk or irrational thoughts. And this shouldn't be only to other people, but also to us as individuals, and be able to challenge those thoughts. And I say these thoughts just come so automatic. I call them negative automatic thoughts. They are so automatic, but we need also to know how to shift these thoughts with a more realistic and a balanced mindset. So for example, if you find yourself thinking, this is too much, I can't manage it, shift it to this is tough, but I've worked through tough things in the past and I can manage it step by step. Because the same energy you are using to think this is too much is the same energy you can use it to think, yes, this is tough, but I have worked through tough things in the past and I can manage it. And by that, it fuels you up. Practice healthy coping mechanisms. Engage, when we talk of this, is instead of turning to destructive coping mechanism, there are people who want to deal with stress when they are eating, overeating, in alcohol, drug consumptions, or other outbursts. Try healthy alternatives to be able to cope with your emotions. And we know some healthy alternatives, issues like physical exercises, of course, the relaxation techniques that we've been able to talk about, and so forth, and so on and so forth. And also engage in self-compassion. How many times are we compassionate to ourselves? We beat ourselves so hard. But I want to say this is giving room to work with emotions non-judgmentally. Don't be so judgmental to yourself, Don't be so judgmental to yourself. At least give yourself, that an opportunity to also enjoy some moments despite of what is really happening. And if you become self-compassionate, that is the only way you can also be able to extend the same to other people. Because of our good time, because I can see we are remaining with 7 minutes, I want to, at that point, to pause a bit and just ask if there is anyone who has a question in the call regarding matter stress. And I want to say that the reason why we talked about this is we know as the stress, if it is not dealt with, it builds over time, overwhelms the body. And before one gets to know, it brings a breakdown. It sneaks in so slowly. So I thought because of what is happening around, it is very, very important for us to be very keen on what happens to us. So at this point, I would want to ask if there is a question. If there is a question, we end just few more slides, like 4, and we'll be done. So is there any question? I'm checking in the chat if there is question. And if there isn't, let me go through this pretty fast. And I want to say self-compassion and self-care. I want to start by saying this is not self-indulgence. This is not selfishness. Self-care, self-compassion is a way of self-preservation. And if you cannot be able to preserve yourself, then you cannot be able to extend the care that you may want or the compassion to any other. Always remember to be compassionate. Remember, compassion does not cost you anything. Always remember self-compassion first. We cannot pour from empty cups. We need to fill up our cups to be able to keep pouring out to other people. And that was a quote by Professor Mary Steen. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. As you breathe in, cherish yourself. As you breathe out, cherish all beings. Consider yourself as well. Compassionate towards yourself, you reconcile all beings in the world. Why is this? If you're compassionate towards yourself, and even the Holy Bible, the Word of God talks of love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if you cannot be able to take care of yourself, there is no way. You don't have that capacity. So when you are able to have the capacity to be compassionate toward yourself, then you are able to exhibit, you're able to extend. The spiral effect to other people becomes automatic. Self-care can be asking for help. I want to say asking for help is not a sign of weakness. It takes courage to be vulnerable. So when you're reaching out and saying, hey, I need this support, that shows great strength. And so self-care is also a way of asking for help. Spending time alone, putting yourself first, asking for what you need, setting boundaries. Let me say asking for what you need. And this point is basically that act of speaking your mind. And most of the time, suppressed emotions happen when you're not able to speak your mind and, just do an asking, or at time give a feedback. That suppressed emotion over time, it can erupt. So staying at home, wow, saying no, and I keep saying no is an answer as saying yes. Forgiving yourself is part of self-care, and taking a step back is also a form of self-care, among many other things. This statement, if you don't make time for your wellness, you'll be forced to make time for your illness. They'll ask us to read that again. If you don't make time for your wellness, at time we are not so compassionate to ourselves in terms of really regarding our well-being. But what happens with the body when it gets to an exhaustion point, it will force you. It will force you to rest. If you don't rest, the body itself will force you. It will shut you to take that time. So let's not think that anytime we are making time, we are investing in our wellness, it is a waste of time, it's a waste of resources. But I won't say that we'll function better if our wellness is also looked at. There is a quote by Ronke, who was a mother, and talked of, I spent my entire life being the perfect wife and mother, cooking, cleaning, making sure everything was in order. One day, my daughter looked at me and said, I don't want to be like you, mommy. You never do anything for yourself. You never do anything for yourself. That was a gut punch. I realized I had modeled self-sacrifice, but not self-love. That's when I started living for myself bit by bit again, at least to show my kids that mothers are also women with their own lives. I don't know how many mothers are in the call, and can get to this, can do all manner of things, but forget yourself, and thinking at time you're setting an example, being a role model and all that. But if you don't take care of yourself, then the ones that you think you're taking care of them, they wouldn't want to put up with such a life. Oh, what a sad way. So the thing is, the emphasis of all this, and I know also the men in the house, the same thing applies. I don't know what sons are looking, what they are seeing. They want to identify, yes, sacrifices here and there. They want to have such kind of a life where there is no self-love per se. So at the end of it all, as we come to conclude in our presentation this night, I want to say that our well-being is our personal responsibility. It is not a responsibility of any other person. It is our personal responsibility, and it has to be intentional. It has to be deliberate. In this day and time, many things are happening. We need to be intentional. We need to be intentional in how we take care of ourselves so that we can be able to extend the same to those who are around us. And with that, this brings me to the end of presentation. And I want to say thank you so much for listening in. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being together with us to be able to hear some of these things. And I would want to see on the chat, what is your take home? What is your take home tonight? And it was a presentation with lots of some stresses, and it was showing us, yeah, this is part of it. Like stress is it's part of our lives, and it is here with us. But how to cope, how to go about it, that is where it all matters. So let me see on the chat your take home, just one take home. Great information. Thank you. Intentional is the word. Thank you, Purity. Those who are in the call, I want to see what is your take home, or to name the stressor. Thank you, James. The participants in the call, I want to see your take home. Self-compassion is key. Thank you, Dorcas. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm waiting to see. So be intentional about my well-being, as it is my personal responsibility. Thank you, Joy. The basis for mental health in the world is rooted in the introspective self-care and meditations of every individual. Thank you, Prince. Sleep is vital. Thank you. Thank you, James. Thank you. What about others?